Hey everyone, Adrian here over at the Sampleist. Today we are going to go back to the future and look at a recreation of a synth that, well, it really almost never was. Cherry Audio have continued their mission to recreate rare synthesizers in software form, and this time it's the turn of the Rhodes Chroma synth. This is by far the most complex synth that Cherry Audio has created, and as such it's taken them around a year and a half to code and put together. And I can fully understand that, because the Chroma synth itself was really complicated, really advanced for its time, but very complicated to not just program but to actually keep going, but more of that later. For those not familiar with the Chroma, it started life as being designed by ARP Instruments, the same creators of the classic synths like the 2600. However, at the time of designing the Chroma, ARP were in real financial trouble, and the Chroma was seen as a possible lifeline given the groundbreaking technology it used. Sadly, ARP went bust in '81 before the Chroma could actually make it to market. But in a very strange twist of fate, the ARP liquidators appointed the Vice President of Engineering, Philip Dodds, and he got the task of running down the company. Now, Dodds happened to be in charge of the Chroma's development and worked hard to sell it to another instrument manufacturer. This happened and the Chroma was assigned to Fender Rhodes, and production for the synth began in '82. So Chroma is available from Cherry Audio for both Mac and PC, and you can get it in VST, VST3, AU, AAX and standalone versions. Priced at $69, let's spin up Chroma and listen to some of the sounds that this synth can produce. we've had a play through some of the sounds, let's take a look through the interface. If you've ever used any of Cherry Audio's products, then this top section will be very familiar to you. New allows you to start a new patch, and it just sets everything to blank. You can save your patch by clicking the save button. You can go through your presets by just clicking on the bit at the top there and say I want brass, American synth brass. And I can step through these sounds by just using the arrows if I want to in that section. And once it gets to the end of that section, say we're on almost OB, it's true, and then it'll go back to the beginning of that section. So that's quite handy. If you like a patch, just click the little star there. I'll set it as a favorite, and then you can go into your favorites there, and they'll be listed. You can undo or redo changes. So if I change the voice B all the way up and then undo it, it'll send it back. And if I want it back where it was, I can redo. So there's a certain amount of sort of undo and redo within there. This cog button brings up the settings so you can set your audio and MIDI interfaces. And then you can zoom in. Well, when I say zoom in, you zoom the whole interface. Now I've got this just about 147%. So what I did was take it to 150, and there's some grab handles at the bottom here, so you can actually resize the interface, which is nice and handy. You've got your MIDI learn, so you can map controls to each of these functions, which will come in handy. And then you got your MIDI panic, which basically if you've got a stuck note or something, hit that button and it'll reset all the MIDI inputs to the synthesizer. Can change your host tempo. Now you can also use your QWERTY keyboard to control the sound. So that brings up the QWERTY keyboard, and if I play a Q, NA, sorry. So you can actually play the keys by that way. You can change the quality to from normal to highest. Bearing in mind, oversampling does use CPU cycles, so the more you put it on 4 times, the more processing power you will require. You got a help there. You can hide the keyboard. And you also have this other function that says focus, and I do like this because that means I can focus on the actual keyboard if I want to, wherever on the keyboard I want to, and I can use my arrow keys then to move along, which is very, very handy, especially when you got some small writing and you're of a certain age and your eyesight is starting to get a little bit, let's say, suspect. An interesting feature of the Chroma is you can sort of like change the building blocks of your sound. So we've got oscillator A going into filter A, going into amp A, and then out. Now if I just click on this, just left click, and you can then change how this works. Say I want dual layers, so there again, I've got them all going into a ring mod first. Summer 6, path from oscillator B is going to go into filter B, etc. And then you can say, oh, I'll have parallel filters and filter FM. So you've got great control of how the sound just shapes straight away. And I'm not changing anything else on here. I'm just changing the sort of like building blocks, and straight away the sound is different. So that's a nice touch. You can just sort of like alter the way the synth's going to work. Now this is a nice area, is this layer mode, because at the moment we're in single. Now if I press double, we have effectively got 2 chromas. We've got the chroma at the bottom and we've got the expander at the top. And the sort of like more astute that's been looking at this interface as we're going along will notice that these change to C. And if I click on down here, we can edit B down here. So you get B, and then up here we'll have, if I go to solo layer, we'll be able to edit mode into C and D as well. So these will change depending on where you're up to. If I go back to single, we can then split. So we can have the expander on one half the keyboard and the actual main chroma on the other part of the keyboard. And if I just, you can set your split, and then you can solo each layer as well if you so wish. You then change the number of voices, so we can go all the way up to 16 voices per chroma really, so you've got double there, so you can have 16 voices on here and only 8 voices on the other, because if I change that just, so I can have 2 voices on there, so we can mess around with the voice totals. Let's go back to single again. You can transpose up and down 2 octaves, and then the edit mode is down here to shoot between, allowing you to edit a layer, edit A or B, or you can edit them both at the same time. So if I change a parameter on here, just change that, and then go to edit B, you'll see that it's changed it on both of them. And then you can go to your FX, and in the FX section we have some distortion, a phaser, a flange chorus, some delay, a reverb, EQ. I won't go into these settings here because they're pretty ubiquitous of what you would expect them to actually do. Before we come on to these different buttons, what these do on this section, if I just go back to edit A, and you've got the big numbers in there, just a little bit of history on the original Chroma. They were sort of like microscopic, the numbers, and thankfully, because we've got a patch browser, we're okay, because these buttons also doubled as sort of like patch input numbers. So if you want to patch 10, you had to push the buttons, which thankfully we're not recreating absolute like for like. And to change one of these parameters, you can just click on a text box comes up. So if I say, if we go into rate, so if where there's text, text box comes up. Where there's a number, that's the parameter you can change. And all you need to do, you don't have to find the slider itself. You can click anywhere in that button, left click and hold, and then you can just drag up and down and it will change for you. So if I just take the decay, for instance, I can do the same here. I'm not exactly in the box or anything. I'm over here somewhere, and it still works. So that is a fantastic help, should we say, to programming. We then move on to the control section here, and we've already looked at this patch config bit, because this changes this sort of like building blocks of the synth up here. So if I go series filter, I think we're already on one of Sylvius filter FM, there we go. We can see it actually changes there. And then we can enable or disable the sustain pedal. We've also got an auxiliary pedal mode here, and it don't have to be actually pedals, you know, a normal button controller would work. So you can choose it to latch notes, so when you hold a note down, you can start using the sort of like latching other notes onto it. You've got a note gate, which will basically, you only get the sound when you have the pedal or the button down. We also have the types of mono mode. You can have mono aftertouch global or the aftertouch on the last note. At the moment, we've got the keyboard sort of logarithm here in polyphonic mode, but we can change that so the keyboard will act differently, and you'll notice that's when the arpeggiator starts coming in as well. Up down, sequence, and then we have at the end here the threshold, which is one of the more unusual features, as it works in conjunction with the mod sources as like a preset comparator. In other words, if control signal is above a certain level, then I want you to do something. So that's quite handy, sort of like for your sound design there. I do want to mention something about the arpeggiator section, because behaves slightly different to a lot of synthesizers out there, in the sense that if I play, and you'll see on the keyboard here what I want to play is, if I play an A in the bottom, and then I'll play an A minor chord here, and then I'll take my hands off that and I'll play an A minor chord up the top end, and you'll hear what happens. I'll play another octave higher now as well. So it's cycling through all three versions of that chord without me having to hold those notes down. So I don't have to be an octopus and actually hold these notes down as we go along. As long as you maintain that bottom note that I played, it won't reset the sequence. As soon as that note comes off, then it will reset the sequence. So just example. You see, it's reset. It didn't actually play everything else. But if I hold this down, it will play the whole lot. So that's just a handy tip. There is no sort of like end for the arpeggiation until you take your fingers off the keyboard entirely. Now you may be looking at this synthesizer and saying, hang on a second, this is on a subtractive basis. Where's my LFO? Well, that's what this sweep is. That's Chroma's terminology for an LFO. And it runs and works in the same way as what you would expect, in the sense of you can have different types of the LFO. So I can't even say this word. A synchronous free running independent key sync, single free running single key sync, or sync to the host tempo. And then you've got your rate for your LFO. And you can modulate that rate with something else. So I can modulate it with envelope 2 if I so wish. So this envelope 2A over here. We can change the wave shape, and we've got some interesting patterns to play with here. You see the light there tells us whereabouts it is on the just find one like square, so it will change as we go through them. And then we have the amplitude modulation, which is automatically assigned to your mod wheel. So what that does is, where's my mod wheel? There it is. So you just so I can control the sort of mod wheel, use the mod wheel to control the amplitude of the LFO. We then have the attack, decay and release envelopes. Now, most of you are probably used to an ADSR envelope, and the Chroma doesn't have one actually in the envelope section. The cutoff sets the sustain level. It's sort of like similar to what a CS80 did. So you do have a sustain section for the envelope. You've got attack, decay. Your cutoff down here is your sustain. Whereas it's not actually in that run there, but these all run the same way as what you would expect it to do. You can delay the envelope coming on. So what I've done here is, you see, you can press the key and delay the envelope coming on. Usual attack and decay, and then you release. And then you can change, it's like sort of like change the threshold for the envelope coming on. So that's your sort of like envelope section. You got if I change this to, let's say, velocity. So you attack. I'm playing softly now, and the attack is very sort of like comes in gradually, whereas if I hit the keys hard, and apologies if you hear any knocking when I do this, but they'll come on immediately. So there's one way to get some expression in your playing there. We now have this pitch section here where we can change the range, sort of like up 51 semitones, down 12, and I'll just press new again so we reset, and you can fine tune them as well. And then you can do some more interesting things with the mod envelope sections here, because this sets them out. I think it's easier if I show you rather than try and explain it. Is if I set this to pitch bend is probably the best, and I'll need to turn this on as well, and I need to turn these on as well. Right, so listen to what happens if I turn that off. Listen what happens now when I do a pitch bend. I'll just play middle C. So that only goes up a major third. Now if I turn mod 2 on and I say pitch bend, now this will go up an octave and a major third. And if I turn mod 3 on, we end up with 5 octaves and a major third, so it will go straight off the keyboard. That's showing. So this is sort of like an unusual, quirky feature of the Chroma, and the idea behind it is so that you got 3 different mod buses that would be used for different applications depending on the sort of like range that you actually needed. So you can actually say, well, I'll have that on sweep A, and we'll keep that on pitch bend, and we'll put that on keyboard glide A. So now we've got different things going on here, and I need to change this. So this is going to modulate the LFO that way by using this mod 2 selection, and then the pitch bend is on that, so you can have different applications for each bit here. We then have the wave shape part of this, and I'll just reset again, and this starts your actual sound really, so we can have a pulse. It does help if I turn the pulse width on. So this shapes the oscillator A, and because I haven't selected a mod source there, so let's go for pitch bend again. So that's your wave shaping section. Then we come to the filter section, and this is probably a bit more familiar to you, when we've got the low pass and the high pass and the cut off and the resonance. We then can use the mod envelopes here. So if I say I want, yeah, we'll keep it on sweep A. So this is this one here, and I'll tell you what, we'll put it on a keyboard. Is it envelope? There we go. Envelope 1A, that's what's after. So now what will happen is if I move these parameters, so you can change your sound now just by using these mod envelopes, and you can actually have another one there. Say I'll have that for sweep A, and I'm going to put the mod depth up high so this will react more. So you see how they can map these mods to different parts of the keyboard, so like a modular setup there. This volume section defines how these envelope generators sort of shape the amplitude of the sound. So to demonstrate, I've got this set to envelope 1. And now for the best effect, you need this to be set to 100. So if I play this now, listen to what this does to the sound. It's like a little bit of magic. So that's what your volume part of the parameter section does. I just want to pop up back to this MIDI here, because you can map any of these controllers to your own MIDI controller here. So if I right click on rate and say MIDI learn, I can map that to a controller. And then if I say I want to change my cutoff and I want to MIDI learn that, what I can do then is click on MIDI, and straight away we have, well, you can see exactly where I'm up to on the scale here for my sliders and what they're mapped to. Now you can make these sort of preset as well. So it becomes sort of like a global thing, and it's saved with your preset. So when you load up the presets again, you've got your MIDI mappings already there. Because it means that the MIDI mappings can easily be changed to global or preset states at any time as well, because that's all the time or just to the preset. So you can actually save it just to that preset. So you can have different MIDI mappings for each preset you make, or to the whole actual synthesizer, which is quite a handy thing to have. And you just click on the MIDI to get rid of it yourself. That's all. So this is a really complicated sort of like synth to program, but once you start getting a feel of what these controls do, things start to become a little bit clearer. If you ever get lost, you can actually understand your signal flow. So if I just change this, you can actually just follow the arrows and you can understand your signal flow then of what's actually happening. Where is oscillator A going into? Is it going into filter A? Where is it going after that? You can just follow the arrows there. So if you do get lost, that's a great thing to do. I haven't touched much on this double, where you get 2 chromas in one, because essentially the controls that we saw in the single layer sort of transfer across to when we have a double layer. Handily, they don't call them A and B, they actually call them C, and then if we have another layer on top of that, they'll change to D as well. So you got an idea of what actual layers you're on. And you can set your split points. I think I mentioned earlier, you can set your split point by hitting set split and then pressing the key on the keyboard. So I've gone for the middle C. So you can hear straight away there's a difference in the sound. Let's take a listen to how Chroma sounds in a composition context. Before I press play, I would like you to keep in mind that what you are about to hear is purely the Chroma. There are no external effects, EQ, compression, just the pure raw sound from this amazing instrument. So a little bit of 80s electro there. This track started really with the motif, the little riff that we play throughout on the OSX Mini patch. And on its own it sounds like this. And straight away that sound just smacks 80s without even trying. And the whole track was literally built around just that little 4-bar riff. I repeat it again straight away, and in the next set of 4 bars we sort of like vary a little bit. Now, underneath that, we end up with a little chord sequence on, I think it's on Shifting Sands is the chord sequence. Here we go. Those two just complement each other really nice. And then underneath we have the Chroma sequence bass. Now this sounds like this. And then we put a little ARP over the top of all this. Now the drum track itself was made up of these 4 sounds: the deep kick, and the nasty snare, and we have some toms, the classic 80s tom roll that you hear in lots and lots of tracks. Now I'll come back to the beginning and the middle section because I just wanted to scoot over to the end because we had a few extra bits in, because you see there's odd gaps here, but over here they're full. And that's because we ended up putting some hi-hats into the sort of reprise of the motif. Now you probably gather there, what I've done with the hats is mimic the rhythm of the actual lead sound. So if I put these two together, and then go slightly offbeat on the very last 4 bars, it just gives a little movement to the track. And then when we put all this together, I'll tell you what, we'll do this next bit first. On the short bells, because the short bells is a little arpeggiation that I programmed in to do this. And that became a little bit more complicated at this other end because we end up with different chord sequence than we've played throughout. Just go to Shifting Sands. The chord sequence goes like this, and there's a very quick change near the end. So that took a little bit of doing to put the short bells to fit that quick chord change because of the melody that was actually playing. Now, if we put this all together, we'll go into the last half of this and just mute the windstorm, because we'll come to that after. Now, if we come to this middle section, we have a loose, different pad sound. We bring in the hi-hats, which we've already heard what they're doing. So we'll have a listen to this loose string pad, which is playing a different chord sequence. Now, that is a bit out of kilter with everything else we've done, because we've done even number of bars throughout the first half. Now, this one, we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've done 7 bars and then repeat to get 14. So it just sends a little bit of interest and catches the ear that something different's going on. And then we play a little melody on 2 sort of like keyboardy type sounds from the Chroma synth. So they complement each other nicely, and then we end up with a single note, sort of, it's like a pad and a bass together, and a sequence. Now, to frame this middle section here, we put a little sort of like a downer going from the main section into this little break. So that, if I just play last 2 bars. Moves nicely into that section. Now, to move from this section into the main riff, we use the ubiquitous 80s style tom fill. And what I did there was I actually left a little gap before we come in, just to build anticipation, whereas during the actual sort of like main section, we have it to finish bang on the end beat. Whereas if you listen to this one, there's a gap at the very end. That's all just to add a little bit of interest. And starting the whole track off, we use the shifting sans pads just to play a little chord sequence and layer it with Windstorm. And I will just play those 2 together. And there we have it, a little 80s electro composition demonstrating what is possible with the Chroma synth. Like other Cherry audio instruments, this review has been an absolute sheer delight to make. From the moment I pressed a key on the keyboard, I had a grin on my face. It was like being transported back in time. The Chroma is a very complicated beast of a synth, but it does have a very unique sound that Cherry Audio has managed to capture. I may be wrong when I say this, but I believe that this is the first time the Chroma has been captured in software form. Yes, I know there's been sample libraries, but this is a fully editable and programmable version of the Chroma, and then a bit more. The original Chromas were, and still are, very temperamental and require constant repair. There are reports that people spend $100 to $200 a year just to keep the Chroma going, which is frankly a little bit insane. One of the things that made the Chroma special was way back in 1982, the most futuristic features of the Chroma were the fact that the instrument is multi-timbral, and it also had the Triad computer interface. This meant that when it was plugged into an Apple II computer fitted with the correct hardware, it acted much like today's MIDI interface. Remember, this was 3 years before the Atari ST came out with the MIDI interface as standard with the computer, so it was way ahead of its time. The sound from this software recreation is full, lush and very deep. Cherry Audio have to be congratulated with their intention to detail and expanding on the stock presets that featured on the original Chroma. And this is a good thing, this is you can actually load system exclusive data, System X for short, from the original Chroma into this software recreation. You probably can find some of these files littered around the internet. And in addition to the standard single instrument mode, Cherry Audio's Chroma includes an expander mode, so it effectively adds an entire second Chroma synthesizer to the mix, with full on-screen controls that can run in layer or split modes. As you can probably tell, I'm absolutely in love with this recreation, and I would have no hesitation in saying, go and buy it now. Just go to Cherry Audio, push that button, buy it. We would like to thank Cherry Audio for sending across Chroma for a review, very much appreciated. And you, dear viewers, I hope you enjoyed this little Back to the Future trip. Remember to subscribe to the channel so you can keep up to date with all the latest releases in the world of sample and patch libraries. And until the next time, keep on creating.